We are back on week 2 of the Frostburg Sports Awards for the 2022-23 season, and we've got Kat Smith, our female athlete of the week, who scored a pair of goals and a couple of shutout wins against AB and Wheeling. Kat, how would you kind of rate your performance and the team's performance overall? 8 goals scored and none scored against.
I think we have a fire this year, not like winning last year's conference. So I think that's definitely helped us in games because each game we're like, let's get another shutout, let's destroy them, let's score a bunch of goals kind of thing, because we want everyone to play and we're out there to have fun too. It's definitely a different dynamic, and it's going to be hopefully a good year.
So far it has been good, and mentioned the goal scoring record, and have not scored less than 3 goals in any game this year, 15-4 and none against. And I looked back at some of our records, and it's the best start to a year defensively that we've ever had. It's never been 5 straight shutout wins to start the year. And you kind of have to take some credit for that at least. Obviously, we've got a whole defense and midfield in front of you, but you know, to come out this strong, it really speaks to the focus and mentality of the team so far to not allow a goal.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep that shutout streak going. Me and Abby before every game we're like, what's our goals? And I'm like, shutout, good communication in the back, and that's definitely what we're striving to do.
You brought out the communication, and certainly something that's big with you and Abby, and then you have CD on the left side, Caroline DeSena, Hannah Thompson in midfield, Caroline Burton, and then Tony Fialke-Meiser all on your side for a lot of it, and then Ashley Bilger as well behind you guys. So I wanted to focus specifically on Abby and CD because it seems like you three all have a really good chemistry and understanding of one another. Abby, obviously the 5th-year senior, and CD really growing into her own, only a sophomore still, it seems hard to believe, as well as yourself. But the communication and chemistry you guys have, how have you guys kind of built that throughout your year here?
I mean, I lived with CD, so we've spent time off of the field as well, and same with Abby. I think her being a 5th year, she definitely has more of an insight and is able to kind of mentor us all. So the communication that we have on and off the field and the friendships that we have definitely help while we're playing, because I mean, I trust them. You know, I trust Ashley, I trust CD, Abby, May, I trust the whole team, so that helps.
One thing you've done this year is adding a lot of goal scoring to your tallies. You scored in 3 out of the 4 games, I believe it is, this year. On corner kicks, almost all of them, and it just seems you're always in the right place at the right time. Is that something that you try and do of going up there? You've obviously, one of the biggest bodies on the team, and know from the preseason you had the highest vertical, which came to help in the Wheeling game, and you jumped higher than everyone else. But, being able to add that goal scoring threat, how has that sort of come to you?
I've kind of always been good at those corners. In club, my coach would be like, how do you get ahead on every ball? But it's honestly Keely has 2 of those assists. Those perfect balls near the 6 is where I like to stay. So just having a player who can put those balls in, and then, I just get lucky, I guess. Like you said, right spot.
Certainly sometimes there's also a little bit of skill involved, but you spoke about earlier the hunger that this team has after coming so close last year to a conference championship. Back-to-back division wins and looking pretty strong so far in the North Division. Obviously a big week for you guys, a couple of big road games at West Liberty and Notre Dame. What is the mentality around this team of searching for that division title and going farther than that and trying to win a conference championship for the first time at Division II this year?
I think we're taking game by game, and our coach always says each game is the biggest game. Our next game is our biggest game. So if you have that mentality, then you treat each game like an MEC final, then you're going to play your hardest, put your most effort in. So I think that kind of mentality helps us fight.
Well, Kat, thank you for coming on today to talk to us. You've obviously got a busy week ahead of you, your practices, your games now twice a week, but we appreciate your time here. Congratulations on your couple of goals in your week.
Thank you.
All right, well, next up, we talked about him earlier, but Coach Brian Parker will be on as our Coach of the Week, so be sure to stay tuned for him as well. Here on week 2 with head coach Brian Parker from women's soccer after they completed their undefeated week. Coach, still no goals allowed this year. You guys have been scoring a lot so far, another couple of big wins. How would you rate your team's performance the past 2 games?
It's hard to deny that it feels pretty good. We're obviously trying to keep our heads, on straight and just focus on each game as they come. Obviously, we know that the better we do, the more attention we get, the bigger target is on us, and I think we had already become a big win, in the MEC over the last couple of seasons, and so I think this is just another one of those experiences, and we just have to make sure we focus on each game as they come.
On the season as a whole now, you guys have scored 15 goals and haven't conceded once this year. You're out shooting opponents 100-26 across all your matches. It just kind of speaks to the dominance and control that this team has, where even if there's some spotty moments, I think back to the first game, Shippensburg, the opening, 5-10 minutes were a little bit here and there, and there were a couple of moments against Georgian Court, but overall, if you look at the whole of the games, it really seems like this team has come together and really learned how to dominate their opponents.
Well, it's been a project. There's no question about that. If you go back to the first season we had in the MEC, things were rocky. It's been a building process, and I think the last thing that comes when you build a team is that level of composure and calmness and sort of, I don't want to say like a maturity and an ability to manage games. Part of that is a combination of maybe withstanding some bad spells and realizing that we're going to make mistakes, and certainly we're going to make plenty of mistakes. We're going to make a few less than the opponents, and that's always our objective. And now we have some goal scorers and some players who have the confidence and some experience now, and I think we're just kind of seeing those dividends.
We've spoken just around seeing each other in the hallways and on the field and stuff of, the depth that this team has, which really seems like some of the biggest difference that's been this year in case of the past couple years, where you mentioned the goal scorers. There's 7 different goal scorers so far this year. And I remember specifically in both the Alderson, Broadus, and Wheeling games that you brought in almost your entire reserves off the bench that weren't starters, and they didn't lose a beat. I mean, they continue to hound the possession and press the other team like the starters were out there.
A wise soccer coach once told me that you really are only going to have one very good team if you have 2 very good teams on your roster. So we're not 5-6 deep, like football or maybe men's lacrosse or something, or a pitching staff, but we certainly have a nice collection of players that go, right to 25 on our 25-player roster. A couple players have injuries and are managing those, but we've been able to access a pool of players in our roster that are good players, hungry players, and in the case of how we're building the program, they're young players, and so they have sort of a naivete about them, but that is also awesome because they're just ready to go out and prove themselves, and it's always fun. And when you get to kind of, we have obviously a rotation, and there's clearly going to be a little difference in the more competitive games, but it's awesome when you go to that second group and they get a chance to show their stuff. And I would argue the second half, like for example of that Wheeling game, was some ways better than the first because we really did some nice team things in that second half.
We talked to Kat Smith earlier, and she said that this team has a hunger about them after coming so close last year with making the conference championship game and then falling just short. You look at the MEC this year, and there's some crazy results that have happened all across the conference. Right now, we're leading the North Division by good ways, and there's a couple of big games coming up. She mentioned that you emphasize to this team to take it one game at a time. Every game is the biggest game of the year. With such a big week this week with a couple of more North Division opponents, how are you preparing to prepare the team essentially with these couple of big games to try and stay in the driver's seat?
Well, one of the cool things about a double round robin, of course, is that you get to play those teams a second time. And so the first time around, there is a little bit of a discovery process, right? You feeling out process, you might say, where teams are going to try some things. Maybe they show their best set and then don't make as many changes for you because they know they're going to get a second chance. We're going to probably play a couple teams for the third time, right? Because we just did some expansion in the conference tournament. So, it's interesting. The video is very revealing, but I have a feeling that teams will not do for us what they did for the previous opponent. So we're always a little cautious about scouting. But to be frank, this schedule's set up for us very nicely. And so the early home games were helpful. We've got obviously some teams that have not been as successful in the conference early. Wheeling, brand new coach, probably didn't know his players a month ago. And so, we're just taking a little bit of an advantage of that, but there's no question that we realize that as the momentum builds, the pressure builds, the quality of the teams will build. We're going to have some fantastic MEC games here very soon, and I think the second time around with all the teams will be a little bit more of an adventure.
Well, Coach, thank you for coming on today to talk to us. You've obviously got a busy week to prepare ahead of you, but want to congratulate you on the week that you just had and wish you the best of luck for this upcoming week as well.
I appreciate it very much. Thanks for your coverage.
All right, well, next up we will have Dane Kuntz from football, who is our male athlete of the week. So be sure to stay tuned for the end of the interview. Wrapping up week 2 of the Frostburg Sports Awards with our male athlete of the week, Dane Kuntz from football, who is also the MEC Special Teams Player of the Week. Dane, a pretty big win for you guys and a big game for you yourself. How would you kind of describe your performance and the team's performance?
I would say we had a pretty good game. I mean, I played pretty well, made field goals, 4 field goals, punted all right, and kicked off pretty well, and we won the game, so that was the most important part.
One of the big reasons for winning that was in the second half, where you guys, and you specifically, basically provided the offense, and Sean Aaron had a rushing touchdown, but other than that, it was getting down the field and just not able to finish off the drives, but you were able to provide the points for the team. How big was that for you?
It was pretty big to provide points, but at the same time, I still want to see touchdowns, win by more, just keep scoring as a team, but it's just a thing of we have to score as much as we can to get the win.
One thing this year, and you mentioned it, that you've been punting this year, and the first time I actually did look back in your freshman year, you also punted a couple times in there, but now you're basically the main guy where you're doing both roles. Had you had to adapt anything with coming in and punting now, or you just kind of comes naturally to you just being a kicker?
It's somewhat natural, but it's still a little bit different, and there's a little bit to adjust from the swing, the drop, and then I also have to be more prepared during the game because you punt, because I'm on the field almost every drive now instead of just once we get in field goal range or a touchdown, so it's a little more busy on my end.
We do have to mention that, the first kick of this year, you did miss the first field goal attempt, kind of clanged off the post, but do you have the mentality of just, focusing on the next kick and you don't let any of your misses really get to you, and it's just, you take it one at a time and you have the belief in yourself?
Yeah, you have to take it one at a time and you just can't let it rattle you, but you know what you missed, but you can't think about it too much. You just have to move on to the next one and not think about it, because if you think about it, then you're not as prepared, or you're going to have a higher chance of missing the next time.
On your teammates, where you look at football and it sort of is the old adage that the kickers and the punters aren't really treated like full members of the team, even though you guys are a really important part. Just from the outside, some people don't see that, but when you go out on the field, what's some of the the message that you get from the guys? How much confidence and belief do they have in you to do your job out there?
I would say mostly everyone has a lot of confidence in me, and they almost treat me like I'm the same as everyone else, but they know I do something completely different, and they understand. But for me, it's almost everything's the same, the way they treat me and all that, so it's pretty normal.
You got a big road game coming up this week against Charleston, where you look at kind of last year, it was the battle of the kickers, where their guy Tim McCutcheon hit a couple of 50-yarders to keep them in that season. But for the team as a whole, starting off undefeated, getting just a couple wins under the belt with the new coaching staff and everything, what is your belief and sort of your expectations going throughout this season and coming up this weekend?
I mean, I'd say our beliefs are just to keep on winning the rest of the year, and for me, just to keep performing very well every week, kicking, punting, and kicking off.
All right, Dane, thank you for coming on today to talk to us. We know you're kind of in between your meetings and practice here, and you've got a busy week ahead of you, but we appreciate your time. Congratulations on being named MEC Player of the Week and for being our Player of the Week as well.
Thank you.
All right, well, that does it for week 2. We will be back next week for week 3 of the Frostburg Sports Awards. As always, go Bobcats.